I'd like to use this video as a way of going through the first part of the assignment that you're going to be doing for construction materials 2. So the project is really, this part is broken into 3 pieces. The first part that you're going to be working on is to develop a roof, wall, and basement section. So something that basically on a small residential project would go all the way from the roof through the footing of the residence. So we're using the Michigan Uniform Energy Code to determine what those are values that we're going to be working toward for the project. So if you look at the attached map of Michigan, what you'll see is how the state is broken down into different climate zones. And so for Kent County, we are here, and that identifies us as climate zone 5A. So if you look at the table here, we're really looking at the values that are located here. And so that is going to give us what the requirement would be for the fenestration, which would be the windows, for skylights, for what the ceiling R value would be, and that R value for the ceiling needs to be 38 in order to meet the code. For a wood framed wall, the R value is 20 or 13 plus 5, and I will explain that in a minute. And then if you're doing a mass wall type, that would be the 13 or 17, and I'm going to assume for the purposes of this that you're probably using a wood framed wall. And then the basement wall has an R value that is identified here. So if you look at what these values mean, this one is pretty straightforward with regard to the ceiling, where you have to meet the 38. For the wall, when we look at that, go down to what is identified as F down here. And it tells us that we need to, if we have cavity insulation, the 13 plus 5 means that there can be an insulation inside or in between the studs that is equal to 13, and then you have to have 5 that's continuous insulation or insulated siding. If you don't use that, then you have to make sure that that cavity is equivalent to an R20. So for your projects, you will have to figure out which of those factors based on the section that you create that you need to use, whether you need to use an R20 or an R13 plus 5. For the basement walls, we're looking at what is identified here with the C, and the 10/13 means that you have an R10 of continuous insulation, and that can be on the interior or the exterior, or you have to have an R13 cavity insulation at the interior of the basement wall. And we'll talk about that a little bit more when we look at the section. So that's where on this first page of your assignment, when you look at those R values, that's where the ceiling R value is the 38 from the table. The walls are that R20 or 13 plus 5. The rim joist, which is the same as the walls, and then the basement walls, which is the R10 or R13. So let's look a little bit at that section. So it tells you to draw a wall section by hand or on the computer, and I don't care what tool you use as long as it's clear. It needs to fit on an 8.5 by 11 or an 11 by 17 sheet of paper, and it should be printed to scale. And so when we look at what that wall section, or what I'm talking about with regard to that wall section, as I said, it needs to go from the roof all the way down to the footing here. So we're really looking at kind of what this envelope is going to be. So when we're in terms of energy, so we're looking at this envelope here. And so we need to look at how we're keeping the inside space warm during the cold months of the year. So that's one drawing that you will be doing is a section, and that's that first part 1 here. The second part of the assignment is for you to draw small details of the critical points. So of the 4 points that are here, the ceiling, the wall, the rim joist, and the basement. And it says to draw a partial section detail similar to this right here for each of the components of the 4 areas, add them up to determine the R values for each of those components, and then using the materials that you identify in your building section. So for that, what we're doing is you're looking at what is the section that goes through here for that ceiling, and the section that you're taking is from the inside, so where you have your gypsum wallboard, up into the trapped airspace up here. This doesn't count because you're past where that thermal envelope would be. So when we're looking at that, this is the section for the ceiling. The wall section would be anywhere that's through this part of the building. The rim joist is through this portion of the structure, and then the basement would be through here. So it breaks it up into here's one piece, here's the other for the rim joist section, here's the wall section, and then here would be the ceiling section. So you can kind of see how that envelope is covered through those 4 different areas.